A silver storm is brewing on the horizon, filled with the energy of 1,000 untold stories. Brace yourself for the impact of cinematic excellence and narrative power that hits like a bolt of lightning. Hit subscribe now and join the storm today.
The morning of my father's 60th birthday party, I wore a yellow dress and drove 2 hours with a trunk full of balloons. I want you to know that. I want you to hold that image for a second. The yellow dress, the balloons, the coffee. I stopped to get at a gas station somewhere outside of Raleigh because I was running late and I was happy. I was genuinely, fully happy because $89,400 was sitting in my savings account, and in 11 days I was supposed to close on a house. My house. The first one in my family. 3 bedrooms, a backyard that backed up to a small creek, and a front door painted the color of slate. I had driven past it 4 times. I had measured the windows in my head for curtains. I had a picture of it saved as my phone wallpaper. I want you to hold all of that too. I grew up the youngest of 3 in a family where money was always either a secret or a crisis, never something in between. My oldest brother Marcus was the charming one, the one who talked his way into and out of everything. My middle brother Derek was quiet and stayed out of trouble by staying out of sight. And then there was me, the one who got the scholarship, the one who graduated early, the one my mother introduced at church as my daughter, the physical therapist. Emphasis always on the D, as if there was only one like me in the whole state of North Carolina, and she had personally produced me. I was proud of that for a long time. Being the responsible one felt like an identity. It felt like armor. My father worked construction most of his life and retired early because his knees gave out before he was ready. He was a good man in the way that a lot of men from his generation were good. Present, providing, but emotionally somewhere about 15 feet behind the rest of us. He didn't ask a lot of questions. He trusted Marcus to handle things because Marcus was the oldest, and Marcus had always been the one who talked. That was the first mistake in a chain of mistakes that I spent years being too loyal to examine. Marcus had started a business 3 years being too loyal to examine. Marcus had started a business 3 years before the birthday party, kitchen renovation and remodeling. He had a logo and a truck and a website and a way of talking about it at family dinners that made it sound like he was one good quarter away from being featured in the magazine. I believed him because I wanted to, because it's easier to believe people you love than to sit with what it means if they're lying. What I didn't know, what no one told me until it was already over, was that the business had been bleeding money for almost 2 years. He owed a supplier in Charlotte over $60,000. He had taken out 2 loans he couldn't service. He had, at some point in the winter before my father's birthday, gone to my father and told him everything. And my father, the man who trusted Marcus to handle things, had agreed to help him. The only problem was that my father didn't have $60,000 either. But he knew where it was. Here's the part I have to explain carefully, because I have read enough comments on enough videos to know that someone is going to ask why. Someone is always going to ask why, and I understand it. I would ask it too. 7 months before the birthday party, I took a contract position with a clinic in Portland, Oregon. 12 weeks, good pay, a chance to build a specific certification that would have bumped my salary by almost 20% when I came back. I had done the math. I had planned everything. The problem was that while I was in Portland, I needed someone back home to handle a few things for me. My car registration needed to be renewed. There was a billing dispute with my old apartment complex that had been dragging on for months and required someone to occasionally call and show up in person. And I had, very specifically, told myself that I would close on the house within 60 days of returning, which meant I needed to be ready to move money quickly when the time came. Marcus offered to help. He sat across from me at my kitchen table 2 weeks before I flew out, and he walked me through it the way he walks through everything, confident, reasonable, just a little bit like he was doing me a favor by agreeing to it. "It makes sense," he said. "You need someone you trust. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." I added him to my savings account as a co-signer with limited access. Withdrawal only with my approval. That's what I thought the banker had said. That's what I was sure the banker had said. I was wrong about the banker had said. I was wrong about a lot of things. I found out in a bathroom. Not a hotel bathroom this time. The bathroom of my parents' house, the one my mother has had the same green towels in for 15 years, the one with the little framed cross stitch that says, "Bless this home," that my grandmother made before she passed. I had slipped in there during the party to fix my eyeliner, and I opened my banking app out of habit, the way you check your phone when you need a second to yourself. Not because you're expecting anything. I checked my balance. I read the number. I read it again. $214.67. I sat down on the edge of the bathtub. The sounds of my father's birthday party came through the door. Someone laughing. Music from the little Bluetooth speaker my mother sets up in the kitchen. The high voices of my nephew and niece playing in the backyard. I could hear my father saying something to someone in the big voice he uses when he's happy. The birthday voice. The good day voice. I sat there and I read the transaction history. 4 transfers. Over 9 days. The last one, 3 days before the party. All of them while I was still in Portland, still working, still measuring windows in my head for curtains. $22,000 and $25,000 and 27 cents, $400 and 20 cent, 400. Every single dollar. I didn't cry. I remember being surprised by that, by how quiet everything inside me went. Like a room after someone slams a door. Just air. Just the hum of the exhaust fan and the green towels and the cross-stitch on the wall. I called the bank first. I sat in that bathroom with the party going on outside. And I called the number on the back of my card, and I asked them very calmly to tell me everything they could tell me about those transactions. They could tell me they were authorized. They could tell me they originated from the cosigner on my account. They could tell me there was a process I could pursue if I believed fraud had occurred, and they could give me a reference number, and they were very sorry. I said thank you. I hung up. I fixed my eyeliner. And then I walked back out to the party. Marcus was standing by the grill with my father. They were both holding bottles of beer. Marcus was laughing at something, and my father was nodding in that way he has, the slow, satisfied nod of a man who believes the problem is solved. That was when I understood. Not all of it. Not the specifics, not the supplier and the loans and the 2 years of bleeding, but I understood the shape of it. I understood that this had been agreed upon between the two of them and that I had not been part of the conversation. I understood that my $89,400 had been a solution to a problem I didn't know existed, and that no one had thought to ask me if I wanted to be the solution. I walked up to Marcus. I said his name, and I said I needed to talk to him for a minute. He looked at my face, and I watched something flicker behind his eyes. Not guilt exactly, more like a man doing a quick mental calculation and realizing the numbers aren't going to work in his favor. We stepped around the side of the house, away from the yard and the grill and the music. I told him what I had seen. He didn't deny it. What he said was this: "You were never here, Simone. You were in Portland, living your life. Dad needed help, and you had the money sitting there doing nothing. You're young. You'll rebuild it. You make good money. That's it. That is the exact sentence. You're young. You'll rebuild it. You make good money." I have replayed it probably 400 times since then. The casual certainty of it, the way he said doing nothing about my 9 years of savings, my early mornings, my second job on weekends for 18 months, my no vacations, my no new hair, my no new anything for almost a decade. Doing nothing, like it was a pile of leaves that had just blown into a convenient place for someone else to use. I looked at him for a long time, long enough that he started to shift his weight and look back toward the yard. I said, "Okay." That was all. Just okay. He looked relieved. He actually looked relieved. He actually looked relieved. He actually looked relieved. I went back inside, and I sat next to my mother on the couch, and I ate a piece of cake, and I watched my father blow out the candles on his birthday cake, and I sang happy birthday with everyone else. My niece climbed into my lap. My nephew showed me something on his tablet. I hugged my father and told him happy birthday, and I meant it because none of this was his birthday's fault. Then I said I had a long drive and I needed to get going. My mother walked me to my car. She held my hands in the driveway the way she does when she's trying to be gentle, and she said, "Marcus told me you might be upset about the money. I want you to know it was going to help the family, baby. What's ours is ours." There it was. What's ours is ours. There it was. What's ours is ours. I thought about asking her whose hands had worked the extra weekend shifts, whose name was on the account, whose 9 years it was. I didn't. I hugged her. I told her I loved her. I got in my car and I drove out of the neighborhood, and I pulled over about 4 blocks away and I sat there for a while. Not crying. Still not crying. I was past crying in the way that you can get past it when a thing is too big for tears. When the thing you're looking at is so much larger than you expected that grief hasn't figured out how to reach it yet. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my real estate agent, Diane. She had been in this business for 19 years, and she had the steady voice of someone who had seen most things. I told her what happened. I told her I needed to delay the closing. She asked how much time I needed. I said I didn't know yet. She said she would handle it. She would talk to the seller's agent. She would see what could be done. The second call was to a lawyer. Here is something I wish someone had told me before any of this happened. I wish a teacher or a counselor or even just a person I trusted had sat me down at 22 and said, when a family member has co-signer access to your account, not power of attorney, not a beneficiary designation, but actual co-signer access, they have real legal authority to move that money. The bank is not required to call you first. The bank is not required to verify your approval. The bank did not do anything wrong. What happened to me was a civil matter, not a criminal one. And the difference matters enormously. A criminal matter means the police get involved and someone gets charged. A civil matter means you hire a lawyer and you sue, and the process takes time and costs money, and there is no guarantee that you win, and even if you win, there is no guarantee you collect. My lawyer, a woman named Patricia, who took family financial fraud cases, was honest with me in the way that only someone who has had this exact conversation 50 times can be. She said I had a case. She said the facts were clear, and the transfers were documented, and Marcus had essentially admitted to it in front of me. She said the question was not whether I was right. The question was how long I was prepared to fight, and whether Marcus had the money to pay me back even if a judge ordered it. He didn't. That was the answer she was walking me toward. The money had gone to the supplier. The supplier was paid. The business still failed 6 months later anyway. I had 2 choices. I could pursue the lawsuit, spend the next 2 to 3 years in legal proceedings, pay attorney fees, probably collect a judgment I would spend years more trying to enforce against a brother with no assets. Or I could begin again. I chose to begin again. That was my decision, and I don't regret it. I want to say that clearly, because I know how it sounds. I know someone is going to read that and think I let him get away with it. But here's what I understood by that point. I was not going to spend the next 3 years of my life feeding money and energy and emotional health into a lawsuit over a man who had already decided my savings were less important than his convenience. The best revenge I had available to me was a life he no longer had access to. So that's what I built. I want to skip ahead, and I want to be honest about what that means. Skipping ahead means skipping the part where I sat in my apartment for a week and barely ate. It means skipping the Christmas where I told my mother I wasn't coming and listened to the silence on the phone before she hung up. It means skipping the birthday text Marcus sent me in March that I read and put my phone face down on the table and didn't answer. It means skipping my father calling me in April and saying, "Simone, this is tearing the family apart." And me thinking that the family had not seemed particularly concerned about what was being torn apart when they were moving my money in $9,000 increments. I am skipping all of that because it is real, and it happened, and it was painful. And also because it is not the most important part of the story. The most important part of the story is what I did next. I moved money differently this time. I opened an account at a bank where no one in my family had ever been a customer. I gave no one the account number. I gave no one online access. I gave no one my new debit card. I took the recommendation from a financial advisor, a real one, not a YouTube video, an actual credentialed advisor I paid for 2 sessions with, about how to protect assets while building back toward a real estate purchase. I picked up an additional per diem shift at the clinic, not every week, not permanently, but consistently enough to matter. I moved to a smaller apartment, not because I had to, I had enough to cover my rent, but because every dollar I wasn't spending on a second bedroom I didn't use was a dollar sitting in an account with my name on it and only my name. I stopped explaining my life to my family. That sounds small. I want to tell you it was not small. I came from a family that expected narration. Where you were going, how much you were spending, what your plans were, when you were coming home for the holidays, why you hadn't called. I had been narrating my life to them since I was old enough to have a life to narrate. And the narration had cost me. Because the narration had been how they knew what I had. I stopped. Not with anger. Anger would have been a kind of connection, a kind of continuing to care. I stopped the way you stopped checking the weather in a city you no longer live in. My friend Deanna had gone through something different but adjacent enough that she understood in the way only someone who's been through a version of the same thing can understand. Her parents had borrowed money for a car when she was in her mid-20s, promised to repay, never did, and somehow made her feel guilty about it for 3 years afterward. She was the one who told me, early on in the beginning again phase, to stop making the accounting of what happened to me the central story of who I was. You keep saying what he did, she said. What he did, what he did, what he did. But you're still here. You're still doing. Start talking about that. I thought about that for a long time. I started talking about that. 14 months after my father's birthday party, I sat in the office of a different real estate agent. I had moved cities for the per diem opportunity and found a market that was more manageable, and I signed paperwork. The number in my account at closing was $97,200, more than I had before. That matters to me, not because the number is the point, but because the number is the evidence. The evidence that it was not, in fact, irreplaceable. That I was not, in fact, too old to rebuild. That the things they had said to make me feel like I had no options, "You're young, you'll rebuild it," were accidentally correct. I did. The words were designed to diminish and they were used against me, but the underlying fact was real. I am the one who made them real. The house has 2 bedrooms, a small yard, a porch big enough for 2 chairs and a table. I planted tomatoes in the spring and they did better than I expected. I have a neighbor who knocks on my door occasionally to bring me things from her garden and ask how I'm doing. I have a commute that takes 11 minutes on the days I drive and 20 on the days I walk. I have a front door that I painted a color I chose. Nobody knows the color except people I invited to see it. Marcus reached out 8 months after everything. Not an apology. I want to be accurate. It was a text that said something like, "I know things have been weird. I hope you're doing okay." I read it the way you read a notice from a company that has already canceled your service. With mild interest and no urgency, I did not respond. A week later, another text came. "Dad's not doing well. You should call him." I called my father directly, not through Marcus, and my father was fine. It had been a ploy. I noted that too. My mother called me on a Sunday in December. She asked how I was. She asked about work. She asked, very carefully, if I was seeing anyone. She did not mention the money. She did not mention Marcus. She did not mention the birthday party or the account or the 4 transfers or the sentence that Marcus had said to me on the side of the house. We talked for 22 minutes about nothing important and it was fine. She is my mother and I love her, and I have not yet figured out what that means for the shape of our relationship going forward, but I am done being the one who decides that the love is large enough to absorb everything without changing anything. There are things I cannot fix. I cannot fix that my brother made a decision about my money without my knowledge or consent. I cannot fix that my father agreed to it. I cannot fix the 2 years of business failure that they had been carrying alone because they didn't trust me enough to tell me, or didn't think I would give them the money if asked, or maybe both. I cannot fix the accounting of what I lost in terms of what that $89,400 would have become in a different account or a different market by now. I did the math once. I closed the spreadsheet. What I can fix, and have been fixing, is the story I tell myself about what it means. There's a thing that happens when you grow up in a family with a certain kind of money stress. Not crushing poverty, not wealth, but the middle ground, where there's enough and also never quite enough, and the line between the two moves constantly. What happens is you start to believe that you and your money are not really separate things, that your financial situation is a measure of your standing in the family system, and that the family system has a kind of first claim on what you earn. That if you have more, some of that more is owed. I believed that. I am telling you, I believed it not because I am proud of it, but because I think a lot of people in the comments of videos like this one believe it too. And I want to say clearly, it is not true. The hours you worked are yours. The restraint you exercised is yours. The account with your name on it is yours. And if someone takes from it without your consent, that is not a complicated family situation. That is theft with paperwork. You are allowed to name it that. You are also allowed to name it that quietly, in your own head, without broadcasting it to everyone you know, and then get up and go to work and begin again. You don't have to make it a battle. You don't have to make it a war. Some things you just make into information. Information about who is safe and who is not. about where your financial life can breathe and where it has to hold its breath. And then you move accordingly. I moved accordingly. I am 31 now. I own a house. I have a retirement account that I do not discuss with my family. I have a savings account that no one has access to but me, and I have confirmed at length and in writing exactly what that means with a banker who answered every single one of my questions until I understood the answers. I take a long walk most mornings before the neighborhood gets loud, down to the end of my street, and left and through the park, where the people with dogs nod at you. And the early light comes through the oak trees in a way that reminds me that the world is large and the crisis that felt permanent was not. I think sometimes about that bathroom, the green towels, the cross-stitch, the hum of the exhaust fan, the moment right before the grief knew what it was looking at when everything was still just quiet. I think I didn't fall apart in that bathroom. I fixed my eyeliner and I walked back out to the party and I sang happy birthday and I held my niece and I ate my cake. And then I drove 4 blocks and I pulled over and I made 2 phone calls and I started. That is the version of myself I return to on the days when something feels too large. Not the person who got there first. Not the one who didn't make any mistakes. The one who sat on the edge of the bathtub and read the number twice and then stood up. You don't have to be okay about what happened to you. You don't have to forgive it on any particular schedule. You don't have to keep the family peace at the cost of your own. But you can stand up. You can fix your eyeliner and walk back out and start making calls. You can build something behind a door with a color you chose, in a city you moved to on your own terms, in a life that belongs entirely and only to you. And the people who told you that you'd figure it out, they were trying to use that against you. Don't let them have that either. Figure it out anyway.